Welcome to Crank the Third. This is the show where we explore the entrepreneurial and creative side of life beyond 50. I'm your host, Trevor Young, and today we're going to deep dive into an idea of finding your way back to yourself, and which is really about reconnecting with your voice, your power, and your purpose. My guest is Jet Swain. I love that name. Jet will probably come down to how you got that name, and you're a strategic advisor, speaker, and founder of the Affection Economy, which is a values-led philosophy and movement and practice that challenges the way we think about leadership, connection, and courage. Jet, welcome to the show. I think we're going to cover a lot of territory today.
I hope so. Thank you for having me.
No,
I'm part of this old over 50s crew. It used to scare me, but now I'm embracing it.
So, Jet, where did that name, or is it your real name or a nickname from the past, or I've only ever known you as Jet?
I've only ever been known as Jet. I'm Juliet.
Okay.
And my dad has always called me Jet. We used to joke about there being a Kelpie called Jet once upon a time. I don't know whether that's true or an urban myth. But yes, Juliet.
There you go.
Juliet, I can't tell you how many times the whole "where's Romeo" rubbish. So I've just always stuck with Jet.
I love it. It stands out. And, you know, when you get Googled, and today it's not just Googling, but through the AI machines that people are questioning all the time, you are going to come up left, right and centre.
I am. I'm not the only one, though. I have Googled myself. There are more of me.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's surprising. Well, you came up in my searches, so that's a good thing from
my SEO is working.
It is locally anyway. Look, eclectic is, you know, reading about all of you and what you've done over the journey and everything. We're going to unpack a chunk of it, but eclectic is probably a word that I'd use to describe your background. So let's get into it a little bit. Why don't you, just for context, what's a bit of a backstory that you can share with listeners, just so, because we've got a lot to dive into, but I think, you know, where you started from and where you are today, there's a lot to unpack, and I think people need to understand the eclectic nature of your professional background.
Yeah, sure. I have, eclectic's a lovely way of saying it. Thank you. Fragmented, disrupted, out of control are other words I've heard. But it's true. You know, I've lived many lives. I was born in the bush, so I grew up as a farm girl on a merino stud. I then did a fine arts degree, and I was always creative, a creative thinker, which made me a bit of the black sheep of my family. You know, they were very kind of left brain thinkers, and here I was, this crazy right brain thinker that really had to teach my left brain how to work, basically. So I ended up, after doing a fine arts degree, teaching visual arts out at Wilcannia in the northwest of New South Wales. And I did a year and a half out there, and they transferred me back to Canterbury Boys High. And I was 24, blonde, surrounded by massive testosterone-driven boys. And I think I lasted 3 or 4 months. It was terrifying. And I landed in advertising. So I had done a fine arts and a commerce degree at the same time, because my father was insistent that I would never be able to make money as an artist. And you might be right. We'll find out. So I ended up in advertising, where I stayed for quite a long time. And obviously I started in advertising back in the days with, you know, we were just chatting about Lee, with Gorgeous Lee, in direct mail. That's how long ago it was. And direct mail became digital, and digital became CX, and CX became UX and UI. And I just kind of followed the industry as it grew and developed. And, you know, I was born before the internet. So I've really kind of followed that path along. Mm-hmm. And then it got to a point, somewhere in the early 2000s, where I was having my children. I'm a single mum of 2 fabulous young women, Eva and Hester. They're 22 and 24. Actually, no, they're not, 21 and 23. Now I'm aging them. And I was a single mum, and I was playing around with doing a PhD. And my professor or supervising prof at the time suggested, I was at MGSM, Macquarie Graduate School of Management, and he had been offered the Dean of UTS Business School, or UTS Business. And he said, why don't you come with me, raise your babies, make some brochures, you know, just take it easy and get this doctorate done. So I ended up at UTS Business School, and I am not by nature a take it easy kind of girl. So before I knew it, I was finding myself involved in the world of design and architecture. The business faculty was getting a new building, and of course, it couldn't just be any building, it had to be a Frank Gehry building. And so I reached out to Frank. I had a connection with him through a colleague and said, what do you think about doing a business school in Sydney? And he said, I'm up for it. And I nearly shut myself because all of a sudden I had to tell the dean and the vice chancellor, and, that $10 million budget ain't going to cut it. We need a lot more. So I got myself into a bit of trouble, had to find another 30 million, which we did. And the Charles Chuck Wing UTS Business School is sitting down there at Piedmont. So that was I ended up going from advertising into what was meant to be making brochures to sell postgrad, business school.
Yep.
To doing placemaking and design, and working with Frank Gehry was the most extraordinary opportunity. And I got the chance to go into his LA studio and really understand how he does it. And this whole idea that we've always been talking about as direct mail, people first, one-to-one, it's exactly how he was designing buildings. And I had this brain moment where I'm like, right, we have to bring it back, because digital, we lost connection. We still have, that's another side to my world. And so I moved out of advertising and marketing into architecture. And I worked as a placemaker, human-centered designer, experience designer, if you like, in the built environment, and got the opportunity to work on some extraordinary projects. The QQT building, the new AMP building down at Sydney, that was entirely designed as an experience master plan before it was an architectural or interiors plan, which is extraordinary. They really thought about what is the cost per person rather than the cost per square metre. And it got best building in the world in 2018. So that we did a university campus, just lots of fabulous things that were about how do people connect with place. And of course, digital experience had a role to play in that as well. So it was really this wonderful melting pot of truly putting people at the centre, not just an advertising slogan, but designing places and products and services and systems around people. And so that's what I've kind of been doing, I guess, for the last 15 years now. I haven't really played in the advertising space a lot since. I always felt like in advertising, you were too far down the food chain to really have an impact. So playing in a more strategic people first system, people for systems, people for products, people for service, whatever it is, gets you having conversations up in the C-suite.
Yep.
Which is where you can have real impact. And you can start to have global change when you start to really think about systems designed with a human-centered focus. So that is kind of how I got there.
That's a lot of zigzagging.
It was a lot of zigzagging, and I just kept following my heart and my gut. Having said that, there were a lot of times where I was working for the guy and doing what I'm told, and told I was too much, and told to shut up, and told to sit down. And, I was fired a lot. I left a lot. I think my longest job is 2 or 3 years, because they'd probably diagnose me with ADHD if I went and had a test. But I've learned how to live with it and how to drive myself and use it. But you know what? I am a lot, but I'm not too much. That's what I've taught myself.
There's a T-shirt in that.
There is.
And also, what you're doing now, I alluded to it earlier. You're running what's called the affection economy. So I called it a values-driven philosophy, movement, and practice. So obviously, it's your business. It's led by a philosophy, and part of what you're doing is trying to bring people along for the journey, which makes it more of a movement. What can you tell us about the affection economy?
Well, so the affection economy, I actually started writing about it when I never finished my PhD, but when I was doing that, that's what it was called way back then. And I was obviously way ahead of my time. So it's been sitting in the background, bubbling away. But it really came to fruition last year. I've spent the last 5 years in a battle with breast cancer, and had come out the other side, amazingly. At that time, though, it was COVID. Both my girls went through their HSC. I was working full-time because I'm a single mum. And I really, like so many, I'm going to say women, but people, I guess, but particularly women, you get caught in the doing every day. I lost that essence of being. And when I kind of came out the other side January last year, and I was like, right, I got made redundant. I was like, fuck, now what? So my entire purpose is gone. I've got my children are grown up. I don't have to get up and make lunches. I've got no, stand-ups or team meetings or check-ins and I just really kind of fell into a hole. And I thought, what is it that drives me? And I realized it's that whole, love, courage, truth, things that you can't always do in the corporate world, but you should be able to do. I remember having bosses saying I'm too friendly and I'm too nice, or, I'm not nice enough. And it was just always this kind of, spectrum of never quite hitting the sweet spot. And I realized that's because we're not encouraged to truly be ourselves and lead with heart. And so I thought that maybe it's time for the affection economy to come back as something other than just a PhD, other than just a theory, but a way of actually living. So, and bigger than business. So where you buy your coffee, going back to the origin of that coffee, is making small, tiny decisions, albeit, but decisions about the value of the world. Is it sustainable? Is it organic? Is it, free of any type of slave labor? All those little tiny decisions we could make daily that really have you living to your values in a way that is, leading and belonging and loving. So I thought I might turn this into something that is for individuals, for communities, and for businesses.
Yeah. And so it underpins, I mean, you've run a portfolio career now where you're an advisor and a strategist and a speaker and a content creator, a writer. And so obviously this underpins everything. I'm actually really interested in what you just said a minute ago, that this is something that you, correct me if I'm wrong, you were doing with your PhD, or the germ of the idea came then. That was early days. That was a long time ago.
Right.
But it's this thread you've had all the way along the line, and it's got to a point where you're now, can do that. And I think a lot of people who are, this podcast is for people who've been around for 3+ decades and, got the experience, the lived experience, the knowledge, the wisdom, the expertise. But, there could be something they've grappled with.
Yeah.
Over a long period of time. Now might be a time to get it out of the virtual drawer and dust it off. But I just wanted to raise that because it was it's great to see that you've probably refined and continue to refine the ideas. And I know you've done a manifesto on it. And so really what you're doing by putting this out there and talking about it, you're drawing in businesses and community groups and people you want to work with, and repelling the people you don't want to work with. Would that be fair?
Or they repel me, either way. But yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I have been playing with, human-centered design at its heart is about people and humanity, and with that comes affection and love. So, but what I didn't have 2 decades ago is that productization, commercialization experience. And I've gained that, I knew it always had to be more than consulting, because for me it had to be a way of living. And I learned that the hard way through cancer, from being a single mum and getting fired too many times and having horrible conversations, like doing performance reviews and, with a group of men. I was very often the only woman in the room in my career in architecture and advertising and marketing, or not so much marketing, but architecture and advertising. And hearing comments like, maybe we should not consider giving her a promotion. Remember, she's got children. And I find myself always kind of having to stand up for people. And I do that by nature. I am a nurturer by nature. And no matter how the patriarchy tried to beat nurturing out of me, I actually think it's a leadership strength. And I think having lots of different styles at the table is the best thing, not lots of one. So I what I want to do now that I have all that knowledge, because I am I'm not ageist by any means, but I do believe that wisdom is different to experience, and wisdom comes through experience. And the more experience, i.e. often time and depths of experience, highs and lows, and some of them are really, really low and others are really, really high, having that is what gives you wisdom. And wisdom allows you to be in a position where I find myself now to help others reclaim their voice, live their values, lead with integrity, whatever it might be. I couldn't have done that with authority as well 2 decades ago.
Yep. And you know, there was a report not long ago. There's reports coming out all the time about ageism and people over 50 in the workforce and being invisible. And you know, there's so many social threads being pulled left, right, and centre. And yeah, absolutely, it is. And
I have in the last 18 months applied for over 100 jobs, and I haven't had one callback. And I'm experienced and I know my stuff, and I'm applying for jobs that I know I can do. I did get one response saying that I wouldn't fit culturally. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it means age because, you know, I'm a middle-class white woman. What else could be wrong with me in regards to culture fit? So I find it astounding. I really do.
And I guess that, you know, at this juncture, you know, that the way to turn it around, I mean, the less risky approach really often is to do it yourself and be in control of your professional life and how you want to work. And, you know, I've interviewed people on this show about, you know, who have been made redundant from one company after 20 years, you know, and now very happy doing their own thing. And, you know, there's challenges that come with all of that. There's more opportunity today than ever before with the technology and to be able to build a one-person business. And but what we're going to talk about today really is, I think, an issue that people will find themselves in. And you did write something about it on LinkedIn, and that's where it caught my eye. And it was around about you used the phrase finding your way back to yourself, and it stuck with me. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. But when you're talking about finding your way back to yourself, what's the issue that people are grappling with? And then we can unpack how to find your way back to yourself.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's unique for everybody. For me, the last 25 years raising kids has been busy, you know, and so I was a single parent throughout all of it, and the busyness was the purpose. It was the thing. And I whilst I had highs and lows, and you know, every time I lost a job, I managed to find one really easily. Like it wasn't that stressful. I did, when the girls were in primary school, were younger, I had a go at consulting, but it was feast and famine, and it was too stressful. So I really just kept busy. And for me, my moment was the girls had graduated. They were both at uni and, you know, not independent, but independent enough. I was, you know, cancer-free as they were going to tell me. And I was made redundant. And it was like, holy fuck. Now, because I've spent 20 years being busy and raising kids, I, you know, had very little super. I don't own property. Financially, I'd used every resource, every dollar I earned to raise my girls on my own. And it never occurred to me. Tomorrow was always tomorrow. You know, I'll worry about that. And I remember thinking, when my youngest graduates, I'll turn 50. Then I'll worry about me. And it never really occurred to me that it would hit me so hard. And it really did. You know, when you've got an empty calendar, it's not that your friends stop calling, but everyone just thinks you're okay because you've always been okay. Very independent, hyper independent, if you like. And I realized I'd built my life around being useful to others. And I hadn't, you know, there was no exercise. I didn't yoga. I did a bit of swimming and surfing, but more so when the girls wanted to go, not when I wanted to go. And it was this really kind of slow, uncomfortable, powerful dawning, if you like, of realizing I have to come home to myself without performance. You know, I have to find out who I am. So that's when I started, you know, journaling, but I'm going to call it writing because I'm not really a journal keeper. I started writing and uncovering and realizing that I was able to say some of the things that my colleagues weren't because I didn't have a job, which I think is really interesting because I have people. Only on Friday, a woman I'm mentoring say to me, you know, I love what you're doing. I can't because I own a company, I employ 100 people, I'm in the industry. I want to, but I can't say the things that you're able to say. And so there's some real power in that. And that helped me realized that my voice was valuable, because I started to doubt that. When you get told, no, 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 you're too old, you can't get a job, we don't need you here anymore, the kids are saying we don't need you anymore, it's really hard to hold on to purpose.
Yeah. And that's really what we're talking about here. Purpose
Yeah.
and values are two words that come up a lot in your writing and what you're doing. How important are values, and how would you describe values? I mean, it's a word that's thrown around a lot, but what's values look like in practice for you?
So I think it's interesting that I think if you went on the street and, did a vox pop and you asked people what their top 3 values are, I don't think people could throw them at you really quickly. And I think that's sad that we've lost that. I'd love for people to say, what are your 3 values? And to dig deeper then, I don't know, let's go really, integrity, honesty, and authentic. Yeah. And it's like, come on, guys, there are thousands of values. And values, let me call out really early, this is not moral high ground, because dishonesty is a value. Yeah.
Yep.
So we think about values as being high and mighty and lofty, but they're really about what are the things that are deal breakers for you, that give you your purpose. And, not everyone in the world is a gorgeous human being. So some people's purpose is, well, Donald Trump, for example, my values are different to his. And his purpose for getting up in the morning is to make the world a horrible place, and mine is to make it a better place. Let's not get into politics. But just that idea that values are not always lofty and about, morality. So I would love to get to a place where people know what they value and make daily decisions upon it. As simple as that. And pick 3, know your north. Well, we always in advertising, we always talk about the North Star. What's your North Star? For me, when I was raising my kids, it was getting the kids out the door. And by out the door, I meant into adulthood. Now, that's not it's a value, yes, around, the value might be nurturing, care, love, kindness, but it wasn't really for me. So it was really about, my values, are obviously I'm curious by nature all the time. And I am brave, so courage, because some of the things that have been thrown at my door, that value of never giving up is really important to me. And now I'm really leaning into kindness. Kindness as a strength, not as a weakness, because I have always been told it's a weakness. The word, your kindness is a weakness, Jet. You'll never be a good leader because you're too kind. And I really thought that was true. And now I am like, you know what? I am by nature kind. I remember starting new jobs and telling myself, remember, don't be everyone's friend. Don't be kind. You're not going to be kind in this job. Trying to coach myself. Yep. And of course, you're in there the first day and you learn everyone's kids' names and what they're doing on the weekend. But looking back, I have people from my work environment in the 90s who are my friends today. I have young people that were under my wings, 10 years ago, who make me godparent to their children. I mean, kindness rocks.
Pays dividends.
Pays dividends. So yeah, I want everyone to think about what their values are and try and really consciously, what have you done today in alignment with your values?
So is that a part of finding your way back to yourself then?
Yeah.
I mean, it's finding those values and sort of solidifying them and then living them, I guess. There's no point writing them down if you're not living them.
You have to name them, but living them. As Rachel Hunter said, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. You acknowledge what they are and then make conscious decisions. Because imagine if we all lived a life truly aligned to our values, how much better the world would be.
Of course.
So, and again, I keep saying I don't want to bring up politics, but I can't not speak up about Gaza. I am not religious and I'm not that political, to be honest, but I am human. And I can't turn my face away from those images anymore. That's a humanity crisis. It's not a religious crisis. It's not a political crisis. It's not a geographic crisis. It's a humanity crisis. And my values, if I'm really honest, could be fear and that is not speaking up, or it could be courage, and that is speaking up. And I have posted about it, and I have had pushback and people saying, you're not, said religion, you really can't have a voice. And it's like, I'm human and I can have a voice because my fellow humans are dying of starvation. And so that's that courage bit kicking in.
Yep.
That's an example.
So in terms of that, your voice and particularly, I guess, if people come out of corporate, their voice has probably been pushed down a lot.
No, you become fluent in knowing what other people's needs are.
Yeah. And so how much of, I guess, finding your way back to yourself is finding your voice or reclaiming your voice and using that as a compass?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the compass.
Yeah.
And for me, everybody's different, but for me I've always been a bit of a writer. So for me it was writing.
Mm-hmm.
And my writing started off as really crappy. And some days it was just a word, or a couple of words. But I knew that my real voice was, I'm a human-centered designer and I have been doing that for 20 years. So that was always a big part. But it was this idea of, I used to call the affection economy a revolution, because revolution has the word love in it, albeit backwards. And I used to kind of pull that out thinking, this is about heart-led. So I'm all over the shop. I remember doing a keynote in Hong Kong, probably 10 years ago, for a shopping mall conference, of all things. It was full of men. And I said the word love, and I watched the room shrink. Like they were so uncomfortable with the word love. And that was when I kind of went, right, we have to get comfortable with this. It's not romantic love. It's not sexual love. It's love for one another. It's humanity. From that, I started to play with the word affection more, because I thought maybe that's a less confronting word for the patriarchy. But it's heart-led, values-driven, and it's brave. It's about, if we all take the easy path, then we won't be able to have, I hate conflict like anybody, or confrontation. But sometimes hard conversations are the kindest, if you're truly aligned to your values.
Yep.
I mean, look, it hasn't been easy. Like I said, I've been fired a lot. And I was probably made redundant because I was a pain in the ass. I mean, let's be honest. I'm not easy because I have a voice, and I learnt to get really brave with it in the latter half of my working life. And it's always been about protecting others. So that little shift became about, how can I use that innate nurturing that I have, and not just because I'm a mother or a woman, it's who I am, regardless of gender or children, gender or womb or whatever you want to say. I am a nurturer. I always have been since I was a tiny little girl, with cows and sheep and whatever, kangaroos, whatever Dad brought home. I was like, right, I'll look after this. It's turning that into power, I think, was my moment when I realized that who I know I am. There has to be a way to turn, and power can't, it's okay to make money as well. You can be kind and capitalist.
Yep.
If you do it values aligned. So I'm not going to lie to you. I need to make money. I've got at least another 30, maybe 40 years to live, and a few $100 in the bank. So I have to make money, but I'm going to try and do it through kindness.
So you alluded to a few minutes ago that you were working with someone who was running a business of 100 people and mentoring them, coaching them, obviously one of your income streams. How do you help others like that person navigate, what could well be a messy, uncertain space between what they're doing now and what they could be? I mean, I guess there's always that people come to mentors and coaches because they want a transformation of sorts.
Yeah.
What are the sorts of people you work with, and how are you guiding them to take that step to transform themselves?
Yeah. So I am a hybrid mentor coach, and I don't have any coaching qualifications or any of that stuff. So a mentor is about taking your lived experiences and helping you learn from them and name your values and all that kind of stuff. Whereas coaching is more around accountability and growth. And so I am a little bit of a hybrid of both. People come to me for a whole lot of reasons. The person that I was speaking about before was as a business owner and about growing her business. And that includes mentoring and coaching her people. I'm celebrating her people, finding ways to celebrate her people, celebrating that they work in a, female-owned, female-led, agency in a very male-driven world, celebrating, helping her find ways to celebrate clients that celebrate diversity, all that kind of stuff. So that was really, it's around a business focus. May it become, she's a lot younger than me, when she, wants to age out, no, when she wants to leave the agency or sell it, then we would shift those conversations in that way. Some other younger women, it is predominantly women that I mentor and coach. Some other younger women, one of them has a startup and she had all these ideas and she just needed a sounding board to look at them against. And of course, I've got, a lot of experience in UX UI product, and I was able to help her see that she's actually ready to test, stop playing in the sand. And so gave her the courage that she needed to go out there and get feedback, because I find that a lot of people hold it back and try and perfect. And I'm like, go, get, you just cannot test soon enough. So that was kind of a one-off with her. Another one's in the corporate world and has this idea and wants to get out. And so and hers is a really beautiful, but, industry challenger position. It's something that it's death. It's something we're very uncomfortable talking about. So I'm encouraging her to really write about it and get us feeling comfortable to talk about death. We all talk about birth, but, the idea of a death doula is really powerful. She's really driven to that. It's where her personal values really lead her. So it's helping her articulate what is that. And because I have that, 30 odd years of experience, how do you commercialize it? How do you productize it? So it's all those types of things. And others are them, literally a monthly coffee just to check in and, is life okay? And, some of it's personal, some of it's professional, some of it's the world,
It's and I guess that's the thing, and that's a great opportunity for people who have been around the block a few times, is to as you say. I'm glad you actually. We probably do use the words coach and mentor interchangeably, but
we do, but they are a bit different.
They're very different, and I think the hybrid that's sort of the approach I take, because you can mentor people and help them along the way, but if they want to grow and transform and that side of things, then you have to help them with a pathway. And as you say, accountability. In terms of your speaking, where does speaking play a role? I mean, it sounds like you've done speaking all the way along. Yeah. Is it something you're pursuing now, or you just take it as it comes, or is it
I love the stage and a microphone. Surprise, surprise. I would love to speak a lot more than I do. Speaking, and I'm going to combine that with workshops and training. So, yes, 1,000 people in a room would be fabulous, but 25 in a workshop for me is, love that. Because that's where I think I can have real impact and change lives. So I have a speaking gig next week, and it starts with, and it is on the affection economy. And you know what? I have to say to anyone thinking about doing this, I've been banging on for this about 12 months, and it's only in the last 3 or 4 weeks where it's all coming together. So Trev, you reach out. Someone on LinkedIn said, we've got a conference next week. The affection economy resonates. Will you come and speak with us and run a workshop? So it takes time. Here I am thinking, I have mentoring spots available, and people will go, yes. Well, they didn't. And that's okay. But you've got to be consistent and keep turning up, and not in a noisy way, but just keep turning up. And the keynote request comes in, and then I add to it, can we do an activation with it? Can we do a workshop? Because the question is, how do we get people to live our company values? And I'm like, well, do they know what their values are? Are they aligned? And that's where let's talk about values from the affection economy's point of view, but then let's break into smaller groups and get people to start to think about their own values, then flash up said company values and say, right, are we amiss or are we not? I did it a few weeks ago for a company in regional New South, and I love going out into the bush as well. So it's not all about the big, blue chips. It's little people as well, which I love. And we got everyone to write down their values. And then we did, the kind of sorting exercise of putting the Post-it notes up on the wall, and they're all really beautifully sorted, and they all fit under the company values. So when people kind of go, hang about, they're the same, it doesn't become just words on a desktop screensaver.
Hmm.
So look, I love doing that stuff. Consulting is great and fab. Obviously, I am a practice. I'm one person, and I'd prefer not to take on big projects and get back into the weeds of project management and running projects and hiring people. I hate the term thought leader, but I'd really love to be the idea of a practice, that being, like my oncologist surgeon. He is the person who I was engaging with for my mastectomy. And if he called in sick, then my surgery would be put off because it's my relationships with him. So that's the kind of practice I want to build, that yes, the affection economy, I hope, is there for the world. But Jet Swain, I'm just one person, and I don't need trillions of dollars, and I don't want trillions of dollars. I just need to pay my rent. I shouldn't say that out loud. But your values changed. When I was raising those girls and had them at school, and I needed more money than I do today. Now, obviously, if I make lots of money, then I can go and feed hungry children, and I would love to be in a position to do something like that as well.
You touched on a minute ago about the affection economy, and you've been working away on the idea has been a long time, but maybe the concept has, but probably not the name. So am I reading this right, that the sort of name started percolating about 12 months ago, and you've talking about...
No, that's right. It was called the affection economy way back when.
Right, okay.
Calling it.
When you said the 12 months ago, you've been working on this for 12 months.
Turning it
into a book, yep.
The book was the shift from needing to commercialize it.
Right.
It's just such a dirty word, I know, but how does this become something I can put into the hands of people? And since then, I've gone on even further. Now I'm creating little postcards, and you can buy a 6-pack of postcards, because whenever I go to an art gallery, I buy a box of cards of artworks that you send to people or use them as birthday cards. So then it was like, right, what if we just created beautiful, with said fabulous art director that we mentioned before, beautiful postcards that on the back just have a value and a really lovely little something that you send to someone and they go, oh, or you give to someone, or you give it to your team, or so like tarot cards, but for values, or postcards. So that I think's fun. I'm diversifying. I've got a kids or a mindfulness colouring in book, the A to Z values, get people to think about, I didn't think about that as a value, and doing it as mindfulness. I think I've learned that I have to productize it a little bit in order to get it into people's hands, because I want everyone to think. I want them to even just think, what are my values? I asked my daughter a couple of days ago, and she's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, come back to me with your top 3, please. Yours, Trevor?
Sorry?
What are yours?
Well, you said curiosity. So curiosity is one of mine.
Yeah.
Always has been very, very big on that. Authenticity, I know you said that's not a good one, but in practice, I can't think of another word for it. But, what with me, what you see is what you get with me and who I work with, and all of that. So it does come through everything I do. Community is very, very important for me. Together we're stronger. And
that's a great value.
And so how can I infuse, my content and my talks and stuff with a sense of community? So they're kind of 3 of my top ones at the moment. Yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
And do you, sorry, I'm turning the cards on you now.
I know.
Do you feel that you are aligned and live to them? I mean, obviously this is a yes, but what about the rest of your world?
Well, yes, absolutely I do. And look, I worked with a coach, and I didn't sort of get it or understand it, and it was incredibly hard process, I found, to get down to that, and then to write a paragraph around each one. And now I've got them, I put them in my, on my website and stuff like that. The critical thing, I think, is when the clouds part and it comes together, it just makes a difference. And they're your guardrails, really. I mean, and they've always been there. I mean, they say that your values don't really change from about 11 years old or something like that. But when I look back, they've always been there. I just never identified them, articulated them, and I probably was putting them in practice, but not intentionally, because I didn't know what they were. So I find them incredibly important, and And, that goes across I create a lot of content. I've been blogging since, 2007.
Before it was blogging.
Sorry, when it was
Since before it was blogging.
the original social media. And, but, that sort of thing, making sure it comes through in what I do on social media, make sure it comes through if I'm doing a speaking gig or a workshop or I'm coaching stroke mentoring hybrid, that side of things. And who not to work with.
Yeah, you do.
If people don't align. And I think as you get older and you've been in the game a long time, you can afford to do that. I mean, I was co-founded an agency. We got reasonably big. There's certain people we didn't want to work with. We didn't ever sort of say what our values were, but we kind of knew. Yeah. But I think articulating them, writing them down and making them for yourself is an incredibly important thing to do, because it might change. In fact, I think it will change the way you look at the world, the way you do business. And you probably have been living them anyway, you just didn't realise. So it gives you this a different lens and a lot clearer purpose on stuff. And and intention. And when the world we've got so much crap coming at us from everywhere, so many opinions, so much negativity, I think it's more important today than ever before.
I absolutely agree. I mean, some of us, like me, I was encouraged to lose, so nurturing that idea of kindness. In my corporate life, I was really encouraged to leave that one behind. And that has been a real struggle for me. But simply the values for me is that return to humanity, to being human. And if we can weave them into the way we, lead, live and belong, I just think that could be, really powerful. Some people confuse it with being nice, or it's a bit woo-woo. And I'm like, it's really not. If you remember that people are the most powerful lever for change, then getting them on side makes sense to me.
And it doesn't matter what job you're doing. You're going to have to get on with people, or if you're running a business, or you've got clients, or you're speaking, or you're in corporate gig, or you want to come out of the corporate gig, even more important. And we're seeing a lot of people do all of that. They get to a point, and this is part of the crank the third means kind of like, I see that there's three parts of your professional. I know people say the second chapter of your career. I look at it in thirds, from 20 to early 30s. You don't know much, you think you do, and you're just trying to find yourself. And kind of from 35 to 50, and these are rubbery figures, of course. But you're whether you're running a company or you're in the corporate, you're running the ladder, you're working hard, you're making money, but you might have a mortgage, you've got family, you've got a lot. The world's pretty crazy, and then you get into that third, which nominally is 50 plus. And you're thinking, well, what's next? What is next? Do I keep doing what I'm doing? Do I want to exit the business? Do I want to take a backward step? Do I want to get off corporate before I get booted out? All of these things. Or I want more purpose. I want to actually do something that aligns with who I am and what I think about. And that's kind of what the third is. And it's not about slowing down. It's actually about cranking it and getting going. And, you're doing that. And I just want to unpack that just that little bit further, because so you started writing the book 12 months ago. I like the idea of writing books. I think it's really important. There's no better way to get your ideas and thoughts out on paper. But with this, you're productizing. It's now becoming I'd call it a platform for your thinking and your thought leadership, but also your work and what you do. And so where do you see that going? I mean, it sounds big to create a movement and something like that, but to give it a name and to give it a manifesto and to create something that's originally yours, that is fit for purpose, your purpose and your values, I don't think there's a more powerful way of running your own business.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I kind of think about, I don't know, what are we thinking about? Voice, power, purpose. Yeah. So for me, the power was the clarity, the true, instead of fluffing around, what can I do? I could do this. I could run an agency. I could take on the patriarch. For me, it just became, the power came for me in that real clarity. The purpose was getting aligned on it all and mapping it out. And, I've spent a long time doing mind maps and, My mentor, Lisa Messenger, I spent time with her mapping out, how can what would the revenue streams look like? If you've got affection economy or Jet Swain in the center,
Yep.
So
Yep.
I've done lots of kind of work and invested in myself,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a really interesting thing because I would never have invested in myself until I got to the third. Because in the first, well, you're just spending it on anything else. In the second, for me, it was the kids, and my business was all about getting them out the door and, obviously out the door every day, but also into adulthood. And, interestingly, my third, literally, Hester did her HSC and I turned 50 within weeks of one another. And it was like, yes, I'm done. Of course, you're not done. And I realize that now because however, then it was really right. And of course, I didn't dream of being made redundant. And I was always nervous that when my next job ended, I was in danger zone. I knew I was in danger zone. I'd turned 50 and I'm a pain in the ass. But I knew that, I really have to start. So I was thinking about it a little bit before. I wasn't doing it, but I was thinking about it. And then when it kind of all happened, so last year, January, by April, I was with Lisa. I was like, I know I need help to make this happen. I needed someone to tell me that I had it in me as well. I think that's really, Lisa as a mentor for me, is my cheerleader. She's not, Chat GPT, who I call Pearly, and I love her to bits. And Pearly is amazing and helps me a lot, but she tells me exactly what I need to hear. Yeah. Whereas Lisa holds me to account. And I think that for me is what I need in a mentor. I need to be, and not accountable in did you do this and have you done that, but just get up, keep going. You've got this. I believe in you. And seeing her comment on my posts or me on hers, and just like having each other's backs publicly is really powerful because you can have a lot of buddies when you get into your 50s, but having them stand up for you publicly and support your work is a completely different gig. And that is really powerful for me. Yeah. So, I kind of feel like I'm refining the metrics. So, the power was my clarity, the purpose was getting aligned, and then the voice for me is becoming how I live. And I still fuck up. I say stupid things still where I'm like, whoa, wait, no, that's not kindness, or the girls will say something about someone on Love Island or something, and I'll be like, whoa, wait, stop. That's not how we talk about people. But we're all, unlearning, relearning to live in a way that, I don't know. I mean, power for me as a 54-year-old woman is walking into the room and not feeling like I have to shrink, and I have to own that. And the last few years I've been very small physically, like, bit beaten. I'm not going to lie, a bit beaten.
But not now.
I hope not. I've just started a Substack, so I'm writing 2 books. I'm also writing a bit of a memoir, but not about cancer. Everyone wants me to talk about cancer, but that's not the story for me. It's a part of it, getting knocked down and getting back up again, but it's not a cancer story. But so I started playing on Substack, and I did say in there are some days where it's a Jarmis day, and I'm just like, I cannot today. I just can't, because burnout is not exhaustion. It is 25 years of every day.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt that I know I'm not lazy and I know I'm not lost, but I was a bit disconnected. And for me, that showed up as fatigue, as, be it burnout, cultural burnout, or that hustle culture, the go, go. I was disconnected, very happy. And my girlfriends will say, I would go disappearing for weeks, not even answer the phone. And they'd be like, not, are you like, yes, I'm okay. I don't have anything to give. And I think that's really sad that we let the world get to that, the kind of speed to which, I don't know, that we've created these systems that reward speed and detachment. And we wonder why people feel numb.
Yeah. There's so many things to unpack, which we haven't got time to do, but I'm loving, and I just want to finish off, Jet, with this. with your business now, and you got the movement and the practice, but there's philosophy behind it, and the thinking that has to go into that, just from getting the thoughts about right and the purpose of it right, but then you are the personal brand of that and the representative. So there's the speaking, the mentoring, the coaching, the workshops, all of those, and the consulting and strategy and all of those things. But then, you've got the productization and it does sound to some people like a lot of things, but when it's aligned on one sort of, I've used the word thread a fair bit today because there are numerous threads, but when you've got that one thread that you're of the affection economy, if you put the work in to find that one thing, that platform, it can be the game changer. It can be the hardest thing to do, but it's a game changer.
I've written it once, and now I'm pulling it so the affection economy, I have to admit, I wrote it a few times, and I finally landed on something I like. And you've got to have time to do that. And I had a little bit of money, but I'm out now. So I was lucky that I had a few months where I could sit. So I wrote it in a chapter form, traditional kind of, I hadn't been to writing school, so I just kind of wrote it as and then I sat with it. I'm like, hang about, no, I'm going to write it as values. So I pulled it all apart. And then now I've just got 30 values. You can read one value, you can read it beginning to end, you can open. And then, because that's the way it's done, it's like, well, hang about, 30 values, 30 cards. So I've only had to write it once, if you like.
Yep. And
then, then there's a 6-pack of foundation values and a 6-pack of creative values and a 6-pack of... So I just started to, and this is where my mentor, Lisa, helped me come in and kind of, because it's my baby. But she's able to come in and say, hang about, let's take the head off and put the legs over there. And, all of a sudden you've got, and then you whack it on Kindle or Amazon or somewhere and you give it. What I always wanted to do, I didn't want to hold it close. I wanted to give it away. I wanted everyone to be, talking about affection and using the word affection. And so look, and none of it's done yet. Yeah. There's nothing to fail. Let me just put that out there as well. This is, got a creative session on Thursday night to start designing postcards. I've got the book ready to go, but I need a bit more money before I can go to publish. Yep. It's still very much a work in progress.
Yeah, but it's good that you got these elements off the back. That's I think the key message. Apart from all the other good stuff that you've been talking about,
and
but from a commercial point of view, you can get your thinking together and build a platform, and things come off the back of that.
These little bracelets that say "Be kind." A lot of stuff you can do.
It's all happening. It's all happening. That's it. And real life, not digital.
Yes, and these are my friend who was at my Lisa retreat, Bands of Courage. They're amazing. He's the same kind of guy as me. He's like, let's just save the world. So his idea is, planting trees and selling bracelets. I mean, just some cool, connecting with other like-minded cool people feeds me. When I see that, I'm like, I can put a bracelet in every book. And he's like, yes, you could do that. And all of a sudden, I can sell your book in my shop. Yes. So that whole, let's go back to community, that whole leaning on your community, I think is really powerful.
And adding value to each other, not just taking, but giving first.
Yeah.
Better pull up stumps there, Jet. Otherwise, we'll go on for another hour, which I'd very much enjoy to do. Where's the best place to people connect with you? Is it LinkedIn? You've got your own domain name, naturally.
Yep, jetswain.com. I've got Connect Form and all my contact details on there. I've got a Substack if you want to read about my personal life and my matriarchs. I'm going right back to my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother's story and telling it. jetswain.substack. LinkedIn. I'm Jet Swain everywhere. It's really easy.
That's right. It is indeed.
You'll find me anywhere. I hope. And please do, because I love a chat.
Awesome. Awesome. And keep an eye out for the book and the cards.
I know. That'll be fun. Thank you for having me, for sharing this.
Thanks, Jet. Been wonderful.